Another thing that's just arrived is a load of these. These are 45mm diameter poster tubes, and you can see they're slightly larger, but they're almost the same size as the roll cage tubes. And the reason I want those is to make templates, because there's going to be a diagonal here to the frame there, and it's going to go through the bulkhead. Right, I've got my cardboard tube gently clamped into the notch cutter, and you can see I've just been adjusting the angle here to get it right. You can see how, I mean, allowing for the guesstimation that when I cut it with my scissors, you can see that's about the right angle to cut. So I'm going to replace this with a steel tube now and cut it. Here's a useful tip. This is 1 3/4 inch diameter CDS cold drawn steel tube, and it's about 2.6mm thick, used for roll cages. This is sold as just 45mm diameter poster tube. Comes with a plastic plug on each end, and it's for sort of, you know, rolling up your poster and putting it in and taking it around without getting it damaged. Anyway, the point is, one will slide over the other. It's exact fit, which means when it comes to cutting this mark where I need to cut this, I just slide them through each other and draw it on, which is bloody useful actually. Look, there's my cut end. So as a way of templating tubes, this stuff's great. In fact, I wish I'd discovered that earlier. That's turned out pretty well. That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat considering how complicated the cut is. It's good enough gap for me to weld. Go to the other side. Again, it's not absolutely perfect, but I can weld that up. It's touching all the way along there from a good way. That's pretty good too. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Tomorrow I'm picking up the laser cut bulkhead version of this. So then I'll have to test fit it all and see if I've made any mistakes. Right. I sent this design as a CAD file to a local company to laser cut it in 3mm thick steel, and you can see it looks about right. There is a deliberate mistake, you'll see, in that I've got 2 bulkheads. So I don't know if that's good or bad. I've got a spare bulkhead basically. So I either use that as spare steel, or if I completely ruin one, I've got a spare. Anyway, it didn't charge me, so there you go. So I could have cut that out with the bandsaw, but it would have just taken me ages, and it's much cleaner and neater. So now the time is to test fit it. So I've cleared all the wood out here, and if I've done my measurements correctly, it should go in diagonally like that, turn, and then come up and latch into these. So let's see if that actually turns out to be true. Try again. bolted the underside on just with 4 bolts, and you can see, bearing in mind that the previous bulkhead was made of wood that thick, and remember the rear section stopped here and the front section ended there, so that would make sense. So this needs to come back till it's level with here, which should be the thickness of this plywood I'm using. So with some ply spacers down here, we should bring it back into the correct position with clamps. It's also good to put this on because I can check that the mounting for this brace bar here, bracing bar, doesn't conflict with the bodywork, so I haven't welded it in the wrong place. So now I've got a piece of ply wedged in there, clamped in, and you can see it's pretty close to where it needs to be. So I'm going to weld onto here. There's going to be a flange 4 centimeters wide, so 2 that way, 2 that way, and then fasteners through here. So you can see it's, there we are. So you see that piece of metal will be 2 mil thick, then there'll be a piece of foam another 2 mil thick, which is why yeah, so this, if you bear that in mind, this is pretty close if you push it that way a bit. So it's welded in with a mixture of MIG and TIG, and then there's some little filler panels gone in the sides there, and then these strips will run like that over here. And then there'll be quick release fasteners sort of in a line all along the strap. That's the plan. These are not quite in the right place, but they're very close, so I'm going to have to just widen them a little bit, and hopefully the gap's not too big so I can actually still weld it once the diagonal tube is in place. Now here's something I need to think about in terms of fasteners. This is the more conventional type that you see. So you basically drill a hole in the middle, 2 holes here and here for rivets, and then this goes through and locks onto there, and then you, with a quarter turn, it kind of locks on. And because that's springy there, it's got a little bit of give in the panel, so that's the most well known. I'll show you that. See, there's also this type that I've found, and for these again you drill a hole and then there's a hole each side for a rivet, but they're quite a bit smaller. This is spring steel, and you can see what you do with this is you see the serrations there. You basically push it through the panel, push it, and these splay apart and grip into these serrations, and then to release it you turn it like that and then it'll come out fine. Advantage of these is it's more compact, and the other advantage of this is if there's a bit of variability between the backing and the panel, basically you just push it in and as far as you want it to go, so there's a lot more sort of variation in the panel gap between the backing and the panel tolerated with one of these. It goes without saying that these tubes I cut earlier they're almost right relative to this hole, but I'm clearly going to have to widen out this hole just enough to get everything to fit, so that's going to take hours and hours. So probably just going to do it a bit at a time using this tungsten bit, and just do it just enough to get the tube to get into its right location. I've just tacked it into place. I had to do a bit of filing, a bit of a gap here, slightly less of a gap there, still a slight gap. So I'm not sure whether to cut a tiny fillet C-shaped piece to go in there, or whether to fill it with weld. I'm not sure yet, I have to think about that. So there we are. Basically it's all TIG around there to here, and then it's MIG here. It's basically just easier to get it in, filling awkward gaps. And it's the same the other side. This is MIG all the way around there, both sides, and yeah, I just basically did C-shaped moves to fill in the gaps in the end. I tried cutting out a small C-shape of metal, it just didn't really work. It was actually easier to just fill it with weld. So I've done that side as well. So reasonably pleased with that.